Life Audio.
Whenever someone's criticizing you, listen.
Mm,
They're probably criticizing themselves, but
mm,
it feels a lot better to say it about someone else.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Anytime a narcissist calls you selfish,
Mm-hmm.
that's such a yeah. Anytime you have boundaries, anytime you do something good, anytime you follow God's leading, wow, I don't know who you think you are. You're self-centered.
Last time I interviewed Dr. Rosier last year, we were talking about ADHD and the connections to body image issues. And she just casually mentioned how those of us with body image issues and maybe even ADHD are prime targets for narcissists. And I thought this was something we should all be more aware of. So I invited her back. I think you're going to really enjoy our interview today. So go check that out. Hey, we're going to be starting a new session of Body Image Freedom Framework Coaching in October. Many of the women who have gone through the 40-day body image journey with us may decide to continue on with coaching, but I want to invite you, if you've considered intensive body image coaching, this is your chance to be part of one of our groups. They start mid-October. Reach out to me, Heather at comparedto.me for more information, or go to the website improvebodyimage.com. Also, we have cool podcast merch. I just got one of the dad hats. It's pretty cool. It says compared to who. Go check that out at improvebodyimage.com/shop. Let's get to today's episode. Welcome to Compared to Who, the podcast to help you make peace with your body so you can savor God's rest and feel His love. If you're tired of fighting body image the world's way, Compared to Who is the show for you. You've likely heard lots of talk about loving your body, but my goal is different. Striving to fall in love with stretch marks and cellulite is a little silly to me. Instead, I want to encourage you and remind you with the truth of Scripture that you are seen, you are known, and you are loved no matter what your size or shape. Here, the pressure is off. If you're looking for real talk, biblical encouragement, and regular reminders that God loves you and you're not alone, you've come to the right place. I hope you enjoy today's show, and hey, tell a friend about it. Dr. Tamara Rosier, thank you so much for being on the Compared to show today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Wow. Our last conversation last year was so much fun for me because we did talk about ADHD, and you wrote an awesome book on ADHD called Your Brain's Not Broken. And we had a great conversation around things like rejection, sensitive dysphoria, and things that kind of tend to connect to body image issues in a lot of ways. And I know I've heard from a lot of women that, they're kind of starting to look into whether or not they do have ADHD because they didn't see the connections before. So that was an incredible conversation. If anyone hasn't listened to that, I encourage you to go listen to that conversation. But you made a comment. Oh, you just stepped in it, but in a good way. you made the comment that women or people with ADHD are good targets for narcissists.
Yes.
And so I just had to have you come back today and tell me what that meant.
Yeah.
So that's where I'd love to start today.
Yeah. So it's not just people with ADHD. It's people who are very empathetic. It's people who want to please. And so those are the people who, to be honest, are attracted to narcissists. So it's a two-way street. It's not just a narcissist sees you and says, ha ha ha, my first meal. They're like, you're attracted to them too.
Why? Why
So
is that? Because they seem more confident than us? Is that kind of the, like, I want to be like that?
not really.
No, what is it?
No, I think, I mean, by the way, the woman who's done a lot of research on this is Stephanie Sarkis.
Okay.
Sarkis.
Okay.
She's done great work on this. And so I would recommend, like, if your listeners are like, hey, I need to learn more, she's really the person who does this.
I'll put that in the notes.
Yep, thank you. But I think when you're highly empathetic, right? Or if you have ADHD, and a lot of people with ADHD are highly empathetic, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The way our brain works is our prefrontal cortex, we went into that. It's the last one. It's not always online. And that's prefrontal cortex just kind of keeps us moving on and keeps screening out information. And so we tend to rely on the emotional parts of our brain, starting with the limbic center. And so what we tend to do is we tend to look past all the narcissistic stuff that they do, and we see the wounded person behind it. Because every narcissist is wounded. And I want to be clear, let's not vilify the narcissist. They're a wounded child who's acting out. Now, I can just hear one of your listeners going, you don't know what the narcissist I was married to.
He was evil. Right? Yeah.
But, our worldview kind of holds that person's still worthy of love and redemption. Right? So I'm not here to kind of make the narcissist. I mean, I personally was wounded by several narcissists who were very close to me. So I still can get triggered when I'm near a narcissist to the point where my brain's like, oh, we got to get out of here fast. Right? Because I was one of those people. It's like I saw the sad parts of them and I wanted to help heal the sad parts. Oops, that was never my job. That was never my job. And so the thing I really want to make a point of saying is people who are attracted to narcissists usually have very poor boundaries. And I was raised with very poor boundaries. And so I didn't know where I stopped and the other began. And so I was raised like, well, if you love Jesus, then you're going to do everything you can for everyone else around you. And that's not really accurate. We need to let people work on themselves. We need to let them work on their own spiritual journeys. We can't do that for them. And so that's how some of us get sucked in.
Yeah, it's just to what you just said. I remember in a counseling session almost having like a very similar conversation with a counselor. Like, but I'm not loving them unless I'm there. I'm not loving them unless I'm involved. And I remember he used the illustration of, and I don't know if you've watched The Chosen or not, but The Chosen in, I would say the last season or season before, this was kind of one of the parts of the Gospels that they depicted. But he was like, Jesus had to flee from his family because they were going to kill him. And I was like, I never really thought about that before. I guess if even Jesus needed to get away from his family, then I guess it's okay.
Well, Jesus had boundaries. And he showed us boundaries the entire New Testament. That he's in the chapter. Because you see him going, hey, I'm tired for the day, folks. I got to head out. I'm going to go up to the mountains. I'm going to take care of myself spiritually. Then I'll come back and meet your needs. He knew where others began and he stopped. And so he was always modeling boundaries.
That's a really good point.
And he really challenged other people to have boundaries too. And so I'm not just applying a modern concept on the New Testament. I'm like, no. Jesus showed us this. Right?
Yeah, that's spot
so,
on.
Even give to Caesar what's Caesar's. That's a boundary. Like, hey, that belongs over there. Keep that over there. So getting healthier boundaries. So I want to be very clear what boundaries are.
Okay, please define.
Because a lot of my clients really confuse this.
Okay.
People think boundaries are, let's say you and I have had beef. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm kind of ticked with her. So I am going to tell her she is no longer allowed to be late when we go out for lunch. Cool story. How am I going to control that? I can't control you. Because another fundamental thing is God gave us each free will. Right? So anyone, we can't do that. So boundaries are about what I will do. Heather, I love you, but when you're 20 minutes late, that really is hard on me. So if you're more than 20 minutes late, I'm just going to leave. Or, so I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm not even angry with you anymore. because I don't have to be. I'm just taking control over what I have control over.
Yeah.
Boundaries with narcissists usually go badly.
Yeah.
And that's usually, if you're married to one, what will cause a divorce. Because a narcissist is like, whoa, what are you doing here? I don't appreciate any of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're probably thinking, I have boundaries. Right? And sometimes parents are narcissists. I want to kind of clarify narcissism
Please.
from egocentrism.
Yes, please give us some definitions.
Because a lot of Americans throw around narcissism.
Yeah.
And really, America is at a time where everyone's pretty egocentric. And I'm not cutting down America. This is just a cultural observation. So, everyone's taking pictures of their phones, taking selfies, like everything is recorded. There's a lot of projection of who we want to be. Okay. And when we hear something, we're like, well, how does that affect me? That's egocentrism. Okay. Sometimes I might be mad because I'm like, wow, you really inconvenienced me. Or my expectations were this. That's egocentrism. Narcissism is a whole different thing. Narcissism is, it's like when the person feeds on your ego. And it's almost like, have you had experiences with a true narcissist?
I think I have. Yes.
Yeah. There's a different feeling there. It's not just a selfishness and a self-centeredness. It's I'm going to use you to feed my ego. And so I may have to put you down. I may have to call you fat to kind of keep you off kilter. And narcissists always keep the other person off kilter.
Yeah.
Narcissists, will lie. I have problems with a lot of politicians in the U.S. because they are narcissists. And I don't understand, but our system, you almost have to be one to run.
So it inoculates you from the hurt, I guess, or something. I don't know.
I don't know, but I mean, you can tell. And so if, for people who've had a lot of experience, it's hard to sit there and like, narcissists always have an angle. They'll brag that they can read others like a book. Ironically, they probably can't, but it's part of their facade. When narcissists are talking, they're the hero of every story.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to confuse this. Sometimes there's other traits like ADHD, autism, where the person will be talking and they're the hero of every story. That's not, they're not trying to wound other people in this. They're just, it's more of an immature social thing, right? But a true narcissist really wants to keep you off kilter.
Well,
and they shapeshift.
So my experience, the reason why I think I didn't even see narcissism was because the person wasn't overly put together or polished. She was a little bit of like a free spirit, just her kids, didn't wear shoes sometimes, like, and so in my mind, a narcissist was like vain. Like a narcissist had to look a certain part and like, that's how I would know. But this person was not that. But later and kind of studying this, I realized that wasn't what like she valued. Really what she valued was that people thought that she loved the Bible. And so in a church context, that she got her supply from feeding on people telling her, how great she was at reading the Bible and studying the Bible. And then to me, it was, that I wasn't as good at reading the Bible, or like, it was so subtle and insidious as I look back on it, where it was like, and I was kind of happy to concede, like, okay, sure, you're better at reading the Bible than I am.
Yeah,
Like, I don't think it's actually a contest, but okay,
yeah,
sure. But it just over time,
yeah,
it kind of just kept growing into, well, Heather doesn't do this as well. Heather isn't as good at this. Heather
yep,
is,
yep,
and mushroomed to, really
yeah,
caused a big conflict in our church congregation. So
yeah,
it surprised me because I thought narcissism meant vanity and they
yep.
looked a certain way. I would just be able to spot a
No.
narcissist.
So narcissists have very fragile egos, and they
Mm,
always have to keep feeding it.
mhm,
So there's always like a person they'll try to go, look how much better I am than this person.
mhm. Yeah.
And there's kind of the word insidious always comes up when someone's describing a
Mm,
narcissist. And it's different from when someone's describing selfish behavior,
hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
there's a purposeful deconstruction happening.
Right.
By the way, I think Dr. Groot is the author. He wrote Narcissism in the Church.
Yeah, I
I
have
don't know
not
if
read
you've
that,
read
but
that.
I haven't, but I have,
Highly recommend
yeah.
it. Um, I so I don't know if you know this about me. I don't have a problem with people outside of the church acting a certain way. I
Mhm,
have big problems
mhm.
when God's people act certain ways.
Yeah, yeah, as you
And
should.
I have higher standards,
Right, absolutely, you
right?
should. That's biblical. Yep.
And yet I see churches full of narcissists.
Yeah.
And it makes me angry and breaks my heart at the same time
Mhm,
because the narcissist is always image
mhm,
managing.
mhm.
And I'm not sure where God fits into that equation.
Yeah. Ooh, man, you kind of went a hard place again because
Yeah.
that's my people, right? We're
Yeah.
worried about our image.
Yeah.
And at what point is there a line that we cross where, egocentrism, I do believe for a lot of women with body image issues, like that's a
Yeah.
challenge, right? Like thinking of
Yeah.
yourself. And some of that I think is out of woundedness, right?
Yep. Oh,
There's,
absolutely. And I mean, I have body issues,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I want to be very kind and gentle and separate. We're not talking that because you care how you look, you're a narcissist,
yeah, absolutely.
right? And so I thank you. I really want to be very clear on that. Um, because that's kind of a woundedness and
Yeah,
um and so the challenge there is how do I let God heal those parts of me
right,
that are
right,
so wounded
right.
and broken? And I have my own
Yeah.
wounds
Well,
there.
and I think so. Tell me how this resonates with your research and, just people you've spoken with or, even counseled. I think there's a lot of women with body image issues that may have been raised by someone who was a narcissist who kind of fed into those body image issues,
Oh,
in one way, shape, or form,
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
created the beast, if you will. I mean,
yeah,
does that ring true? What have you seen?
absolutely. It rings true.
Yeah.
And I remember the goal of the narcissist is to find your weak point and to
Mhm.
exploit it.
Yeah.
And I don't believe this is conscious, it's an unconscious thing to get their
Mhm.
own needs met. And so they're looking, this is going to crush you.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have a lot of personal experience there.
Mhm. I'm sorry.
So yeah, but and I'm holding back sharing those. Normally, I'm very open, but because I want to remain respectful
Mhm.
uh, to all the parties involved,
Sure.
but I do want you to know, like that's where the body issue started,
Yeah.
and then I'm just not good enough
Mhm.
in so many physical ways,
Yeah.
right? Because it's
Yeah.
pointed out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was already my weakness for the narcissist to exploit.
Mhm.
So when you talked about the example from your church, you already had a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
An insecurity around my
Yeah,
ability to read or explain the Bible. Yeah.
right. Yep. And so the narcissist looks and goes, "Oh, I see the insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
I can snap that like a twig."
Yeah.
And you were like, "Yep, you're right. I'm not that. That's fine."
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the first stage of
Mm-hmm.
you're right. I'm humble about this. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, not good enough.
Yeah.
I need more.
Yeah.
Do you see how that plays out?
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's,
I had written a book. I had written my first book around the same time,
yep,
and that did
yep,
not go well.
right.
It was very subtle jabs about really not being qualified for that or spending too much
Yes.
time on that to the
There
detriment of
you
other
go.
real ministry things I should be doing.
Oh,
And that was very
bravo.
self-centered to write a book, because
Oh my
it was all
goodness,
about
yes.
me, not about helping anyone. And if I was
Okay,
really a
so
Bible
let's just take
scholar,
that part.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's take that apart for a second, right? It that you were being selfish.
Mm,
Now, I know you, and you felt led by God to write that book.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. But the narcissist took the story and said, "Look how selfish you are.
Hmm.
Who do you think you are?"
Yeah.
Okay, isn't that quite clever?
Hmm.
Because she was pointing out what she does.
Hmm. Right.
And something I write about, I well, I put it in the workbook for Your Brain's Not Broken. But whenever someone's criticizing you, listen.
Hmm.
They're probably criticizing themselves, but
Mm.
it feels a lot better to say it about someone else.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's what she was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime a narcissist calls you selfish,
Hmm.
that's such a like, yeah. Anytime you have boundaries, anytime you do something good, anytime you follow God's leading, wow, I don't know who you think you are. You're self-centered. Look
Yeah.
at her. She thinks she's everything.
Mm.
Oof,
That's
right?
yeah. Yeah. Okay. This has been so good. We need to wrap this episode up, but can we wrap it up with something like really practical? Like, do you have like a way to spot a narcissist, or is there like a litmus test that, I know it's not going to
Yeah.
be fail safe, but is there
Yeah.
something you can do to be like, ask a question of yourself in your
Yeah.
relationship to identify, oh, this might be narcissistic behavior?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to answer it. It's going to sound a little weird. Okay.
Okay.
It depends if you're in your brain or body.
Okay.
So for me, I get this spidey sense
Okay.
of this person isn't for you, Tamara.
Hmm.
This person isn't for you. This person
Hmm.
is to you, is trying to use you.
Hmm.
Okay. For me, like a body thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, the brain thing, for those of you who are more in your brain than your body, the brain thing is more I sit back and I ask myself, okay, the verse, and by the way, I'm the worst at memorizing. I do have ADHD. I don't memorize well. I can actually I know a ton about the Bible, but can never draw up the verse. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to misquote a verse, but I misquote it to myself all the time, but God knows what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Um, it's the verse that says whatever is pure, whatever
Yep.
is holy, whatever is
Philippians 2:8.
righteous.
Yep.
Yep. Think on these things.
Mhm.
And so in my brain, I first center myself and go, whatever is pure, whatever is holy. So I bring it in to get my brain there. Right. So I'm not accusing, I'm just kind of centering
Mhm.
myself on God's word. Then I'm like, wait, now that I'm in this place, does that person match up with these thoughts?
Mm. Yeah,
Does
that's
that
good.
make sense to you?
Yeah.
Because there's a difference. Like, like they're down here and you'll bring your thoughts up here
Yeah.
and you'll feel the incongruence.
Hmm.
And the reason I do those kinds of tests rather than are they doing this, and this
Hmm.
is because sometimes it can be other things than narcissism,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, Yeah. And remember, narcissism is a survival tool.
Mm.
And I just want to be really careful. And by the way, I just beg people to stop throwing around the word narcissist.
Yeah.
It's okay to go, that person's very selfish, and that I
Hmm.
don't want to be around that selfish behavior. We
Right.
don't have to call it.
Yeah.
In my latest book, I help families break down 3 categories. Is it toxic behavior? Is it noxious behavior? Or is it a peccadillo?
Mm.
And a peccadillo are the small, trivial things that just
Hmm.
get on people's nerves,
Hmm.
like leaving cupboard doors open,
Hmm.
right? I wish you wouldn't. And,
Yeah.
and by the way, I had so much fun writing about my husband's peccadillo in the book, because
That's awesome.
I asked his permission and everything. But so here's an example of a peccadillo. My husband washes his hands, great, at the kitchen, uh, at the kitchen sink.
Mhm.
And instead of reaching for a towel like a normal
Mhm.
human would,
Mhm.
he just starts baptizing everything by splashing his hands everywhere. And so there's
Awesome.
droplets of water on every surface,
That's awesome.
the window, everything, right?
Awesome.
And he's just flapping like a duck. And so that's a peccadillo.
Mm.
Does it bug does it bug me? Majorly. But
Got
we've
it.
been married long enough that it's a peccadillo. That is not noxious behavior.
Yeah.
Noxious behavior is when someone behaves very selfishly
Mm.
and egocentrically.
Yeah.
And that's like they're just thinking about themselves.
Mm.
I'm not doing that for you. That's an
Mhm.
inconvenience to me.
Mhm.
Or I expect you to do that because my expectations are the only ones that count.
Yeah.
That's noxious. That's
Mhm.
like, woo, stinky
Yeah.
behavior we don't want to be around.
Yeah.
Toxic is the narcissist level.
Mhm.
And that's truly the toxic person is seeking to destroy.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so it's okay to just say, this is noxious behavior and I don't want to be around it. So let's
Mhm.
go. Thank you for sharing this example that you used. So if you went back to the scenario and you're like, you know what? She's just not the kind of person I want to be around.
Mhm.
She's kind of negative, and wow, she certainly doesn't, you know, want to be with me in a good way. She's not rooting for me. I don't think
Yeah.
I want her as a friend.
Yeah.
Now, this person took it the next level and decided to have lunch on your
Mhm.
ego, right?
Mhm. Right.
So, so I'm hoping that those 3 levels can help people
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. That's really
Um,
helpful.
I, on TikTok, everything's like, here's my toxic trait. I'm like, stop using that word.
Yeah.
Save it for the truly toxic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. We throw those words around so much. And yeah,
Yes.
I'll finish our episode with the conclusion of my story. So we left that church and we moved several hours away, and lots of relationships were lost. It was really actually sad and
Mhm.
traumatic. I think that's a fair word in that situation, and heartbreaking. And months later, I got an apology note, but this is a narcissistic apology. It said, "I'm sorry if you were hurt.
If you
I'm
were
sorry
offended.
that you
Yep.
felt hurt. I'm
Mhm.
sorry that you felt offended," or, all of those words. It wasn't like, I'm sorry I did anything. It was,
Yep.
I'm sorry that
But it's to
you
add
did
to,
this thing.
well, I apologized.
Right.
I don't know
Right.
what more she wants. I
Yeah.
apologized.
Yeah. Oh, it's tough stuff.
So here's what I
Yeah,
know for a fact.
go for it.
Okay.
Hmm.
Nothing happens that God doesn't use for good.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
And if I really want your listeners to just like, nothing happens,
Yep. Amen.
all things work together for good.
Yeah.
And I plant my flag in that,
Mm,
because when stuff goes down and I'm not happy about it, I'm like, I'm going to trust the God of the universe
absolutely.
that nothing happens
Yeah.
outside of his sight, and he works everything for good.
Yeah.
So guess what? That had to happen.
Yep.
And I'm
That's
sorry
it.
that it happened.
Yeah.
I really am. And I'm not
Thank you.
just trying to be trite.
Yeah.
And I'm
No, thank
sorry
you.
for the listeners who are like, you don't know where I am. I'm still in it.
Right.
Don't give me that crap right now.
Right.
I do apologize because not everyone's ready to hear that.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But I do know you had to go through that.
Yep. No,
And it
I know
gave you
too.
insight probably for
Yeah.
next books.
Yep.
It gave you insight to yourself as a writer, as a wife, as a mother, like.
Yep. And a new radar
So,
for friends. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Oh, this is,
And now you know something about people so that you don't. And I do want to say to your listeners, stop hanging out with the wrong people.
Mhm.
If they're not on the same level as you are, thinking what is good, what is righteous, what is holy,
Yeah.
they will only bring you down.
It's a good word. It's a
And
good
it is
word.
really okay to break up with friends
Yeah.
because you're not on the same wavelength.
Yeah. That's a good word.
I wish I could go back and tell younger Tamara that. I
Mm.
didn't learn that until my 40s.
Yeah. It's a hard lesson to learn. Oh, this is so
Yeah.
good. Okay, we could just keep going and going, but I'm going to
Yeah.
stop us here. And you're going to come back. You promised me you come back. And we're
Pinky
going
swear.
to talk a little bit more about some things that you've written in your new book. Like you mentioned, the toxicity versus
Noxious and
noxious. I'm like, what's that word again? But I also want to talk about you talk about like nervous system stuff. And it's people with ADHD have these challenges, but there's more of us with trauma or just I just don't even think we're aware of what's going on with our nervous system. So let's talk about that in the next episode. I'm so glad you were here. You can find out all about her books and resources in the show notes, and come back and listen next time. I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living. Bye-bye.